Hi everyone, welcome to the Creative Aging SIG webinar. My name's Emily Bradfield. I'm the founder and co-chair of the Creative Aging SIG, and I'm delighted to welcome Sarah and Tash as our two speakers for the webinar today on theatre, agency and aging. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Sarah.
Thank you, Emily. So I'm Sarah Kemp, and I'm joint artistic director of a theatre company, Theatre Sans Frontières. We're based in Northumberland, and we mostly make shows that tour both regionally, nationally, sometimes internationally. And over the last, I suppose, 10 years, I've started to do more community theatre work. And in 2027, I started a PhD at Northumbria University. So I'll share my screen now. Hopefully this will work. Oops, it's gone. Where's it gone? This was all working before. Stop, here we go. Right, here we go. Can everybody see that all right?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks,
Yeah,
Sarah.
great. Over there. Yeah, so my PhD at Northumbria University was looking at the theatre practices of the people that I trained with, who are Monika, Pagneux and Philippe Gaulier, and I'll talk a little bit about them later. But specifically looking at how their approach to making theatre could be used with older people and its impact on older people's experience of their creativity, health and well-being. It was a phenomenological piece of research, so I collected qualitative data through people filling in. Some people wrote journals, people filled in questionnaires, and I ran focus groups with some people. So following the completion of the PhD in 2022, I then wrote an article for the Theatre, Dance and Performance Training Journal, which is the one that's on the screen here. And that was particularly looking at the theatre and agency element of what I was doing with older people, which I'll talk about today. But it's all a bit interconnected really, the creativity, health and well-being. So, why is this not? Does anyone know why this isn't? Oh, here we go. Seeing that now. So this is a quote from one of the participants that I had as part of my PhD. I had 42 participants who were aged between 55 and 92 in 4 different groups in the northeast, 2 groups in more urban areas and 2 groups in more rural areas. But I think this encompasses what quite a lot of older people feel. That they want to, well, she said, I want to tap into the part of myself that is big and not just be a nice elderly woman. And I assume everybody here is kind of familiar with lots of stuff around ageism, so I won't talk a lot about that. But but Tracy Gendron, who wrote a book called Ageism Unmasked and came to talk in Newcastle a few years ago, talks about how ageism locks ourselves into our fear of our future selves. It prevents us from living fully and poses limitations, takes away our power and our sense of agency. And so, as I'm sure everybody's aware, there's societal ageism, where society depicts older people or talks about older people in terms of frail, vulnerable, a problem, a burden, or makes fun of older age through birthday cards depicting people falling down and drinking too much or whatever. And then internalized ageism, where we ourselves put limits on what we do, feeling that, you know, we're saying to ourselves all the time, oh, I can't do this because I'm older, I can't do that, that's only for younger people. So ageism is both internalized and externalized, and can prevent us from continuing to grow in older age. However, Francois Matarasso, who is a community arts consultant and wrote a book called Winter Fires, art and agency with older artists. And his argument is that when we create art, we create something that didn't exist before, and through that process, however small, of creating something original and new, we gain agency. We become subject, not just the object. So just move that over a bit. Sorry, I can see what I'm doing. And so, I was interested in how creativity can also support people to feel empowered or feel a greater sense of agency. So I trained with two people, the first being Monika Pagneux, and this is a photograph of Monika here working with some professional artists. Monika's work is primarily about the body, that it's taking the body into play, into creativity. Her background was in circus and dance, but she's not interested in technique. Her whole ethos was about waking up the performer's body, so that people become more aware of their body, their habits, how they use their bodies, how they might use their bodies differently, and how their bodies interact then with other people through space and rhythm. So she talks about the wake up of each part of the body in relation to the brain, so the coordination between the body and the brain. And then, as Yen and Battersby have said, that's an exploration that takes movement into a game, into play, into the creative process. So with the groups of people I was working with, they were older people, some of them were less mobile, and then others, none of them are 25-year-olds jumping around on the stage. However, Pagneux's approach, as I said, she's not interested in physical virtuosity for its own sake. It's much more about exploring and waking up the body. And as Annabelle Arden, who's a theatre director, performer, says, you don't need the perfect body. You need your body to be available. So some of the work I was doing with people was this work of waking up their bodies, people becoming more aware of how they use their bodies and how they move through space. So these were a few responses from people through some of the physical work that we did, of feeling freer in their bodies, more awake, being more aware of how they hold themselves. And say one lady noticing that if you walk tall, you might look more alive, or people she noticed who walk tall look more alive and therefore have more presence. And also people becoming more aware of their own bodies and then their bodies in relation to other people, so more aware of both posture and communication. This is the other person I trained with, Philippe Gaulier, who's probably best known as a teacher of clown, but teaches, he passed away recently, taught all sorts of genres of theatre making. He always started his year-long course with a month-long workshop on play. Play was at the heart of what he did. The play, refinding the child within us, and then playing with the other people who are on the stage in the workshop with us. So finding that playful communication with one another. So Gaulier and Monika Pagneux both came from the Lecoq school in Paris, and they studied with Lecoq and then were teachers with Lecoq before they left and set up their own school. And three concepts that came from Lecoq which carry on into their work are these: le jeu, play, disponibilité, which is about being open and awake, and complicité, which is about rapport. And here's a little bit more about each of these. So play is very much about the pleasure, about spontaneity, improvisation, taking risks, having fun together. That then links in with disponibility, the openness that Monika Pagneux is working on, the awakening up of the body, and also the openness, the awakening of the mind. And people then being in the moment, not judging themselves or judging others. So creating a space that's a safe space for exploration and play. And then together with others, playing together. And this is the basis of ensemble work, a spirit of playful collaboration. And quite a lot of the participants, we had in one of the focus groups I had, where we talked about this a lot, people said that one of the things that really struck them about what we were doing was this sense of creative collaboration, which they didn't experience in other kinds of activities that they did. If you're going for a walk, or you're playing cards with somebody, or going to the gym, you might be doing exercise, but there's this sense, or even doing pottery workshop, but you're doing it either talking to other people or on your own. And that particularly this kind of drama that we were doing was about that collaborating with one another, playing together. And this was quite new for a lot of people. People's generally their experience of drama was either from primary school, being in a school play, or sometimes amateur dramatics. And the people who've done amateur dramatics, and this isn't necessarily true about all amateur dramatics, but they felt that it was more restrictive, that it was much more about having a text and then being told to stand there, say this, do that, in a much more formalised way. One woman even said that she'd been told she couldn't join a particular group because they already had enough women of her age and her physique, and they didn't want anybody else. So what I was doing was a different approach. It doesn't necessarily suit everybody. What it does, though, enable those people who want to have a more exploratory, improvisatory approach to theatre making to be able to participate regardless of their mobility, what they look like, what they feel like, how their voice. So these are a few photographs so this is some physical of this awareness, awakening up, exploring individually the body and space. And then here, people together, then exploring together, creating different kinds of shapes, their bodies, and playing games, probably games that many people here are familiar with, games that invite people to be present, to be in the moment, to have good eye contact with one another. These are all different elements of building up this rapport together. And people generally enjoyed the opportunity to play, and felt that, maybe as an older person you tend to play as a grandparent with children, but you don't play for yourself. And that chance to play, to have fun together, to muck about, to make a fool of oneself. This was a space where they could do that. So all together, what we were trying to do was create an environment of trust, and people described it as being a supportive environment, one where they experienced teamwork, camaraderie, and as a result could feel the possibility to express themselves, to experiment, to take risks, to step out of their comfort zone and maybe try things out that they hadn't done before. And as one person here said, I discovered that taking risks could be exciting and help me keep growing. So this comes back to Tracy Gendron saying how ageism creates these limits on us, which stop us from continuing to grow and develop throughout all ages. And here people felt that they could keep growing. And these are another photograph showing again playing in space. So there'll be we do lots of games, lots of exercises, and also move into improvisation, creating little scenes, little situations, characters, taking little bits of text or sometimes writing bits of text, but always in this process of exploration, rather than saying do this, do that, stand here. So these are some responses from some of the feedback that I got from people, just samples of people talking about that sense of freedom to experiment, to express, to be loud. Again, it's very something that people talked about, how they felt they could use their voice in a way that they wouldn't normally do, but the possibility to shout, to be loud, and to have fun doing that, and a sense of liberation through what we were doing. Oops. So that's an idea of what I was doing with people through the PhD. Since then, I've continued to work with the group in Hexham, and they're keen on performance, so we've moved more into performance. And this is a show that we made in 2022-23, which was based on stories around people's parents and grandparents growing up in the 1950s, hence the costumes. And we made it in parallel with a group of similar aged people in Amsterdam, run by a colleague of mine, somebody who I trained along with. And the two groups made their own shows, both about the 1950s. And then the Dutch group came to us and performed in Northumberland, and we ran a shared workshop together. And then the following year, we took our show to Amsterdam and had a weekend in Amsterdam. So that as well was a very empowering, confidence building experience for the people involved. And then last year we created another show. So these are shows that have been co-created by the cast with me, and they write scenes, they create characters, and then I kind of shape it and direct it dramaturgically and directorially. So this was a show, Many Happy Returns, that we were commissioned to create by the library service. We've done quite a lot of collaborations with the library service, and this was to celebrate the centenary of the Northumberland Library Service. And we created this show through research, lots of looking in archives, to tell 100 years of the Northumberland Library Service. And I think you can see from these photographs that people are kind of very present and very engaged, and they have a sense of it's their sense of confidence, of being there, being on stage, being visible. And I think that is important for them, very important for them, it's something they said, and also important for audiences. So we've taken these shows to community venues around the county, and quite a lot of older people coming to see the shows, and I think it's been very positive for them as well to see other people like them on the stage. And again, the group has grown as a result, as other people have come and joined in. So this is a final quote from, which I think encompasses a lot of what I've been saying. This is a lovely lady who was from Argentina, who'd lived in Newcastle, worked as a nurse for many years, and felt very much that, you know, an older person is supposed to, you know, behave in a certain way, and in this space she could, so she says, do all sorts of things and not feel judged in any way, and therefore, you know, have a sense of agency and openness as a result. So the last thing that I was going to do, hopefully there's still time,
We've
is,
got about 2 minutes,
yeah,
Sarah,
perfect.
before we swap over to Tash.
Yep, perfect. So if I can find this. So I've got a little bit of film from a group that we ran alongside the performance group. This is a group of older people who didn't want to be involved in performance, but we had a little bit of health inequalities funding to run this group. And it's quite nice just to get a sense of their voices. I'll just play a couple of minutes of this.
I think this project is excellent for all ages, but particularly for people of my age. And it is a great way of exercising both the body physical and the body brain.
And just very gently, just look round to the right and see what you can see behind you.
Because as we get older, both things slow down and we start losing it. And this project is a great way of exercising both, but in a fun way, so that we don't realise that we're exercising either of these. And I would recommend it really to anybody, just to come along, let yourself go, step out of the box and just experience.
I come down because I have problems connecting with people, remembering what I've said, and it's very good for you to mix with other people. This is what happens if you don't mix with other people. So Wednesdays is the day when I have other people to talk to apart from the dog.
But only if does everyone have food? Okay.
It's been brilliant for me. I have like confidence in myself, and I feel as if I've got more confidence. I find I am more expressive. I'm not like a shy flower hiding in the garden. I've got more going for me. It's brought me out of myself, and I feel so much better.
I am pomegranate, granate, granada, garnet in your mouth. I am red.
Okay, I'll stop there because I think we'll run out of time. Good. I hope everyone could hear that all right.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks. So thanks, Sarah. So yeah, I've put in the chat if anyone does have any questions for Sarah, if you can just type them in the chat and we'll come to questions after we've heard from Tash. And yeah, round of applause for Sarah. Thanks ever so much. So I'll pass over to you, Tash.
Cool, just one sec while I share. Alrighty. You see my screen okay? Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. That was super interesting. Really interesting to hear the sort of bits, kind of academic background as well, as the outputs. I won't have as much academic background to mine. This will be very much of how we did and the output. So lots of photos and videos. Don't think there's any text actually, so you'll have to listen to me, I'm afraid. So yeah, I'm Dr. Tash Fothergill-Misbah. I'm a research associate at Newcastle University, and I'll be telling you about this co-production of theatre to challenge stigma related to neurological conditions, specifically Parkinson's disease and epilepsy, and in Kenya. So we're going from Northumberland out to Kenya today. So this is me. Most of my work for the past 10 or so years has focused on Parkinson's disease in Africa. So initially Kenya, but also Tanzania, Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, Ethiopia, Egypt. So quite quite a lot across the continent. This was taken in Ghana, and a lot of the work that I've done is around kind of community engagement and involvement. So involving people with Parkinson's in the research and the dissemination and the kind of the generation of ideas for research as well. And you'll know that Parkinson's disease is primarily associated with later life. Aging is a risk factor for Parkinson's, hence the kind of focus on aging as my career's kind of gone on, and the involvement with a lot of kind of aging literature and organizations like the BSG. For those of you who don't know what Parkinson's disease is, this is Parkinson's. It's a degenerative condition associated with motor and non-motor symptoms. This is what it looks like as it progresses. And you kind of progress through these 5 stages of disease. I'll talk more about it, but the symptoms of Parkinson's have a lot of kind of negative connotations about where they come from, the origins of disease, the origins of symptoms associated with things like supernatural beliefs, witchcraft, demonic possession, and such. But also a lot of ageism, like we've heard Sarah talk about, around kind of who gets Parkinson's disease and why people get it. So, assumptions that Parkinson's is just normal aging. But also in younger people, this assumption that it can't be Parkinson's because Parkinson's is associated with later life. So lots of kind of aging intersections when we talk about this condition. So I'm not a creative person, caveat. I did biomedical sciences for my undergrad and have somehow fallen into the world of creative methods, which began producing this film called Shaking Hands with the Devil, which is a documentary about Parkinson's from Kenya. Which did very well in the film festival circuit, but sort of allowed me to step into the world of creative outputs and using film as a way of kind of disseminating messages and reaching a broader audience with respect to research. So it came kind of off the back of research, but then sort of gave it a platform where it could be widely disseminated and kind of accessing a different population rather than just academics. Then went on to make a second documentary film called Uhuru, again, which has done very well in the kind of film festival circuit, but was very similar to the kind of the first film in that it was another documentary film. But again, really kind of solidified this idea that creative methods are so valuable in research, in health research, and for the kind of purpose of what I was seeking to do in terms of raising awareness and kind of creating that visibility around Parkinson's and giving people a voice to share their stories about Parkinson's disease. So that's the only background I'm going to give you, really. But I'm going to dive straight into a project that I received funding from the British Academy for, which is called A Canvas for Change, co-producing art to reduce the stigma of neurological disorders in Kilifi in Kenya. Oops, nope, I wanted to say more about that. So I mentioned about stigma and the association between stigma and poor health, poor social health and economic outcomes in people with neurological disorders is a widely recognized issue. We can talk about different forms of stigma, but enacted stigma by other people towards someone is really it can have really devastating consequences, including, for example, human rights violations, murders, ostracization, where symptoms are attributed to supernatural causes. In some places like Kenya, where we're working here, where awareness is limited, people are often accused of witchcraft and demonic possession, and suffer subsequent persecution, obviously can't access healthcare, and other consequences. So the goal of this work was really to prevent that happening, and to ensure that people with neurological conditions can live safe, dignified lives, supported by appropriate policies, laws, and practices, we hope, in the future. So the goal of this work was really to tackle enacted stigma, which is that conceptualization of deficits in knowledge, attitudes, and behavior towards people. And we wanted to do this through the co-production of created arts, because we know that arts-based research is well suited to participatory research through eliciting that embodied aesthetic, emotional way of knowing in the process and in the dissemination of the outputs. So this involved 4 different phases. So firstly, we did a qualitative study to understand stigma better. So I'm going to talk to you about epilepsy as well as Parkinson's, obviously for the purpose of kind of the creative aging SIG. Parkinson's disease is associated with later life. Epilepsy is, of course, a life course condition. But I'll talk about both of them because we can take a life course approach to this session today. So from the perspective of those who are stigmatized and those who might stigmatize as well, Then secondly, to explore the co-production of creative arts as a tool for challenging stigma. And you'll notice that we use the term broadly art because we actually didn't know what we were going to do. We really wanted the process to be driven by people with lived experience. So we were very vague in the proposal development about what arts we were going to use. So in that first phase, in qualitative interviews, we actually asked what people thought was the best way to raise awareness and tackle stigma, and they landed on theatre, which is why we did it. So then to deliver and evaluate the series of co-produced community theatre productions. And alongside the whole process, we've been documenting this and creating a documentary film about the process. So I'm going to focus on B and C today. We just did the delivery in February, so we've not done any evaluation yet, and still working on kind of putting together all the footage from the documentary film. So this will just be photos for today mainly. So one of the first steps after the qualitative interviews was actually getting together with the arts group that we identified, so Juqua Arts, who are the theatre group we worked with. So we brought the academics together with the professional theatre group, who you can see here making notes, and they ran a series of co-production workshops with people from the community. So that's people with lived experience, members of the community, village leaders, village chiefs, religious healers, health professionals, to really build on what we had done in that phase one of the qualitative interviews, but kind of get that in-depth understanding of what the challenges were for the community, what issues that they had. So you can see this lady who would have, with epilepsy, would have fallen in a fire after a convulsive seizure. To really getting those lived realities of what it's like day to day, what barriers they face in the community. And so we held a series of these, I think 5 to 6 workshops with about 50 people in the end. And it just gave the arts group an opportunity to really get to know the issues that they were going to be representing on the stage. So different from what Sarah was describing, in that we hired a professional company to portray the lived experiences rather than having people participate in themselves. So this is just some quotes from the workshops that they did. Kind of gave the beginning of the script writing for the arts group. So for example, a person with epilepsy saying, we're excluded from jobs, our voices are not heard, we have no say. So really that agency and autonomy is taken away from them by virtue of having a condition that is treatable and manageable. So a pastor saying the belief that conditions are spiritual should be dispelled and people should not visit the hospital. So giving the script writers an idea of what kind of myths and misconceptions they wanted to sort of tackle within the scripts. So I'm a pastor, I've prayed for my son, but my wife still believes that my son should see a traditional healer, which I'm really against. So trying to really rid these kind of, not rid these beliefs, but kind of I give people an understanding that these things are medical and can be kind of treated with appropriate medication. Then tackling that self-stigma as well. So I no longer attend ceremonies because people always look at my hands shaking and think that I'm strange or not normal. So trying to elicit that people shouldn't be afraid to go out into the community and sort of can carry on doing things that they like to do, with the caveat that the community even think that people with Parkinson's and epilepsy are not respected. So for example, you might be served in a different plate or not given a seat, and you're viewed differently because you have that condition. So the storylines kind of came together through this process of co-production. So that happened over a period of about 2 to 3 months, and the theatre group went away and drafted some scripts. So they drafted one script for Parkinson's and one script for epilepsy, about 30 minutes each. And we had a script reading in November of last year. So we basically got everyone back from the co-production process, the initial workshops, and basically went through the scripts with them, got some feedback on them. It was funny, there was a humor, so we liked that people laughed, which was good. We got a lot of feedback about kind of the content of the scripts, what things were a little bit off, where they wanted to see more emphasis. We also had a meeting, so at the script readings, we being the research team, didn't give any feedback. It was purely kind of the people with lived experience. Then we had a separate meeting afterwards in this terrible location, and got together with the arts group and basically gave our feedback on what we thought. Basically just a kind of reframing of not dwelling on those misconceptions and myths, but really kind of trying to get that health messaging at the forefront of the scripts. So that was in November. They had 3 months or so to go and tweak the scripts, and then we had the performances in the community in February. So this February just gone, and we did a series of 3 productions in the community to 300 people, and we targeted community health promoters. So everybody you can see here in this tent, and I'll show you some more photos, are community health promoters, and they are basically like the first line of defense of the health system in Kenya and many other countries in Africa as well, but also members of the community. So they were our target, and I mentioned the fourth aim was to evaluate the impact of this as well, but I won't go on to that too much today. But I just wanted to show you this quick video as well about basically, I'll translate after it because it's in Swahili.
There's no
So they will
sound,
put the
Tasha.
sorry, is there no sound?
There's no sound. If you go to
That's
your
very
audio
annoying.
settings and click on original sound for musicians,
Hmm.
it's
That
under microphone modes.
is that not working?
No.
Don't worry, that's fine. Basically, she asked how many of you had heard or seen of somebody with Parkinson's disease, epilepsy, and they all put their hand up. And then she asked about Parkinson's, and nobody put their hand up. Not important. Anyway, so on to the actual performances. So these were done in the community. They basically had a makeshift stage, not as smart looking, Sarah, as your photos that you had of the theatre performances, but basically this was the setup that they used. So they delivered the epilepsy play and then the Parkinson's play, and following each play was a discussion. Sorry, after each the performances was a discussion, little workshop activities and a panel. So this was the Parkinson's play. You can see their supermarket. This is a little duka, a little shop that the person with Parkinson's, who you can see on the screen, owned. And you can see his progression through the play and interaction with a health practitioner. And this is the epilepsy play, where it was a scene of a wedding, and the groom had epilepsy, and the family were very much kind of, oh my gosh, you can't marry our daughter, you've got spirits and demons and such. I won't show you this video because if the sound is not coming through, then that won't work. But basically we've recorded, so without the audio, you can just see that we've recorded the entire performance in the community. So those were 30 minutes each. Oh, now I can't go to the next slide. Sorry, one sec. Okay. So people really enjoyed them basically. They all filmed basically the whole play as well. Because it was fun. It was, it was a community event. It was in their community. It wasn't in somewhere that they had to sort of come outside of town. They could just walk there. It was different. So it was kind of, they had to be there because it was part of their role as community health promoters, and that we'd kind of mobilized them. But actually they really enjoyed it, because arts and theatre are fun. It's nice to go out for a day and watch some theatre, and it was funny as well. There was a lot of humor involved in it. So yeah, it was received really well, and I think everyone was really engaged, compared to if it had just been a sort of lecture seminar type of environment. So we followed it, like I said, with little discussion groups. So we kind of tasked them with some questions that they had to answer, and then they had to feed back to the group. And it was for us to sort of test knowledge a little bit, test the kind of messaging that we'd given out, and just address any concerns or comments that they had at the time. So yeah, obviously they fed back and what they'd learned, what symptoms they'd learned about, and things like that. On the whole, it was good. We didn't have to sort of squish any misconceptions that they'd come out of the play with. So they obviously listened. And then we had a little panel discussion as well with people with lived experience. So This is a person with Parkinson's disease, just giving his own kind of testimony of his experiences and sort of relating it to the play as well. So we had that sort of performance, but also that lived experience through the narrative, but then in the panel discussions afterwards with people with Parkinson's, epilepsy, as well as health professionals, just answering any questions as well. So this is another one of the panel that we did. So again, lived experience here and just sharing their views. So then what we did at the end is obviously we filmed the stage performance in the community, but we also did a multi-camera staging of the performances at a theatre in Mombasa. So this is just a picture of the kind of setup that we had, and that's going to basically become a kind of social media impact campaign where we're going to dice up the theatre performances and then disseminate it online so that we have that longevity. Otherwise, it sort of would have ended in the community, but we want this to go further. So it's really the hope that this will kind of not just stop there, but actually more people will see it from the staged version. And again, just more images from the kind of the stage performance of this. So yeah, we had a really, really fantastic time working with the theatre group. They were very professional. They learnt a lot as well. We've learnt a lot. I certainly have. And yeah, it was just a really, really fun experience collaborating with the theatre and the kind of academic in the theatre. We're hoping to sort of put together a piece as well about that co-production process in terms of our voice as academics and the creative practitioners' voices as well, and sort of how that process worked. We all felt like it was a really good co-production process. We felt like all our voices were heard, and there was no sort of kind of power imbalances in that. But yeah, so a really, really good experience. But just the start, hopefully, because we'll obviously have the documentary out as soon as it's ready, and also the filmed versions of the performances. So yeah, so that's me, but I just wanted to showcase that idea of kind of creative co-production, and it obviously had its challenges, but I think on the whole was really powerful in giving people that voice, that platform to be heard. Especially Parkinson's is one of the symptoms is a kind of reduced voice, literally, lowered voice, and really struggling to kind of to speak, and often people are not heard. So really giving people that chance to be heard and their experiences to be shown was quite powerful. So I'll stop there. These are links to the documentary films that I mentioned at the start, if anyone's interested in watching those as well. But yeah, stay tuned. So hopefully we'll have the documentary out soon for that. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Tash. That was brilliant. I'm just going to quickly just share my screen just to finish off the recording, so that from the recording you can see links to join the Creative Aging Special Interest Group. We're active on LinkedIn, and there's our email address. We're on Blue Sky, but slightly less active. So I want to say a huge thank you to both of our speakers for joining us today, and I'm going to just stop the recording. So thanks very much, everybody, and we'll have the Q&A off recording.